So, I've been thinking about things a whole lot, and I think I understand what's going on now. Um, when you look at history from the outside in or the inside out, you look at all sorts of issues, right? Um, and you look at how a nation changes consistently. Now, America has is kind of dual minded. We are a Gemini nation in one aspect of our astrology charts, right? And this matter is effectively that there's one side that is nationalist and thus also Zionist, as just and they kind of just say Zionism as in, um, you know, that's what we just say nationalism for Israel is that you are a Zionist, right? So I'll never be a Zionist because I'm not invoking Zion. I'm a nationalist who is all for um, the state of Israel existing, as much as I'm all for most states existing that as I assume them to be, right? Um, it's just like we can't go back in time and unify the Korean Peninsula right now, right? There's still going to be a core thinking between capitalism and socialism, between those two nations that are going to be antithetical, and thus causes us to be in the positions that we are in. And you're going to learn by their conduct to their own people who the tyrants are. This is why I keep mentioning, yeah, it's the Jewish state, but they just mean that because they're Jews, right? Racially speaking, they're, they are the Ashkenazis who have settled that land. I'm going to say it. I'm not going to pretend that we're talking about the Hebrew people of the Bible. I don't even know if I can pretend that we're talking about anybody who's got like a Babylonian claim to the first LARP state of Israel from the Babylonians, right? And there's unfortunately a likeness to it today because there was an agreement, a professional agreement made based on in various imperial powers, through influence on the global body that they established. Right, and so like that makes the UN like the host empire to the state of Israel, but it doesn't, because this is the big difference, right? Where you had like an empire and then its state. Here you have this global confederacy, right? And it's a very, very loose confederacy. It's very loose confederacy because it's it's ambassadors yapping and stuff. They don't have any power. They're just they just have all of the talking points of the nation in them or whatever, right? And they do their thing, their negotiation, they speak for whatever. But they're not casting the votes. They're not the decision. They're just handling the decisions in contrast to the rest of them, right? So that's where the limited authority comes from, right? And the left doesn't like that. So they like the idea of world peace, therefore unified world, therefore unified entity of world. And that only works if you destroy the nationalists, those peaceful fucking nationalists who have all the stuff. Let's destroy the model that got everybody all the stuff, so that way everybody could be happy, right? And oh yeah, they, look how many of them they allow to believe in God. Ugh, God, believing in God? How dare they, right? Right? And so, like, all of these things kind of got lumped into this animosity for Israel, coming from, the communists, the left side of thinking getting driven this way, including, including a lot of Jews, right? Because there are Jews on all sides of the matter, just like there are white people on all sides of the matter, and Asians. Everything you say about the fucking Jew is just everybody. It's just that you're picking on it because you have no ability to look at their fucking position. It doesn't matter if the Holocaust is real. The point is that you keep fucking projecting it onto them. Oh, the Holocaust was fake, but goddamn do I fucking hate you and wish I could do it. That's your fucking attitude. So yes, so don't pretend that you're not being that way. You are being exactly that way. Which, whether it's true of history or not, it's a gross caricature that we don't agree with. It is an immoral thing. It is a monstrous thing. It is a thing in which I consider you a fucking barbarian. Because I don't care what your fucking religion is. I mean, I do, but on a different level. If we're all having civil good conduct amongst men, and the only sin you would ever go after me for are the egregious ones that any rational man would agree with a secular argument, then what are we fucking yipping and bitching about? So, what this tells me is that I believe that Israel is kind of literally the same thing as a parliamentary government. And I think that the big issue is that American foreign policy as of late, without you understanding it, has been positioning itself deliberately against Israel, while convincing you that it's all being done for Israel, because you don't understand what the global Jews are doing in the scapegoat game, because you don't like the idea that there's a scapegoat game going on, right? Except when it comes to Charlie Kirk, because it becomes apparent to everybody that Charlie Kirk was scapegoated himself, right? And so what you're doing here is that you're watching the Mossad do shit that you can't blame them for, because they're defending Israel from us. How many people would say that they have a right to conquer America and enforce their standards of reality on us as just punishment because of our history of whatever with the Native Americans? And then, unfortunately, regardless of what's true, these are reasons why we have to lie about it out there, because they're operating within their own realms of authority. They're not operating in our realm of authority. They may not fully understand it just based on the language barrier, right? And so a lot of fucking people are very ignorant, and we're also very sensitive about propaganda. And how do you fucking distinguish between propaganda and people's proper personal testimony that doesn't fit the narrative in your head of who you cast as the villain, the hero, the victim, and the accomplice, right? And this is what we're dealing with Charlie Kirk assassination, right? And that's not going to happen to me. That's not going to happen to you. Because we're not really poking the tiger. We're having a conversation outside of their thing. Charlie Kirk was inside of their thing, right? And they had an emergency on their hand because they probably didn't know how to explain this to Charlie Kirk, because we were allowed to live on our own assumptions as to how the world worked and what we thought was how the world was operating when America was at the height of its benevolent global reach, which most people would say was the Reagan administration. You know, not everything that we did in the public, in the exoteric, was fake and gay. And, you know, you could say, yeah, we did X, Y, and Z good things in the world, so on and so forth. But all of these things also had their backhanded vessels for doing harm. And, some of them may have been always no good models, right? It's like America puts its life savings into TV commercials about feeding the hungry in Africa, and you hear about like how fucking cheap all the food is over there, and you can just give a couple of dimes and you've given someone a feast, and you feel amazing about yourself and about your country. And then you find out that fucking like 99% of it was laundered money. Anything that went into that nation went into the warlords of that nation, who spent it in the manner that socialists always do. I mean, I don't know what to tell people, but y'all fucked up. Right? The intelligence community probably has this internal war because you've got the values that liberals look at when they're spying on a certain country, and the values that conservatives look at when they're spying on another country, right? Somebody may turn a blind eye to communist influence in a foreign country that they've spied upon, only because the Democratic Party put them in that spot, and their secret understanding is that I go with that, right? Sometimes America's just been Israel's enemy despite it all, just because we disagreed on the outcome. And at some point, something is going to have to stand, and as it stands, Palestinians are not even capable of articulating their argument for it. They just want to blow people up until they're left alone, and then call that a state, or something. Are they going to start fighting amongst themselves? How much collateral fighting amongst themselves is there going to be? Do these people even understand their neighbors in Lebanon and Egypt and whatnot? And by the way, most of this slaughter is a Gaza thing only. This is like, it's like the rest of Palestine. Nobody's even talking about the rest of Palestine right now, because Gaza's the only one losing population in droves, which it's unfortunate how many young children there are, but the way Gaza is, the enemy doesn't have a camp. The enemy just lives there. Right? It's like street gangs, but they're like militarized street gangs, right? because all of this is coming from these paramilitary organizations that are for the rabble, it's just like, it's the values of the rabble are abysmal, period. And they're not competent enough to be doing the thing, right? They can't, they're surviving and people are handing them food. They can't feed themselves and they can't arm themselves. So food is being got to them, arms are being got to them, and stuff like this, right? And we have seen the capacity of a retard to put themselves and everybody in their fucking camp of all manner of person in grave danger by being a grave danger and using them as a fucking human shield, right? There are no, like I said, there are no fucking angels, man. They're having you hyper fixated on the sins of a people who have the integrity to be fucking self-analytical, if you want to fucking be frank about it, right? I'm talking about, for all the Jews have no fucking idea. They're just trying to be better people, having been born to live a life and need to make certain choices and have a certain understanding of conduct among men. And this is why it's just like, you almost never have a fucking issue with, dude, there's no fucking Jew you really have a fucking issue with when it comes to just walking down the street and conduct amongst men. You start opening your mouth about the way things are going to be, the way things are going to go down, the way things are, the way they feel about their own people. Yeah, you start fucking frothing at the mouth because some of the shit is so denigrating sounding, and then you realize that half of it's that way for X, Y, and Z reasons. Plus, when you listen to what the fuck I am explaining to you, it kind of makes fucking sense. Well, okay, shit, did the Jews have a right to maybe talk down, just like any race would have a right if the whole world treated them a certain way, right? And I don't like that somebody is using that to be so isolatory, right? So yeah, it's all to trick a nationalist into having an anti-nationalist foreign policy. And I know that Corey from the Phoenix Enigma is going to catch this fucking clip. Corey, please listen to me. Do you hear me? Everything, all of it. Literally, it's America's sin, it's China's sin, it's Britain's sin, it's Mexico's. It's okay. It's fucking okay. The only reason the Jews want to destroy us is because we have irrational liberals that want to let them get destroyed. And they're pulling off the shenanigans on purpose for that reason. Including 9/11. Because we've because by 9/11, look at how globalist we were gonna be, and look at how the result turned out with Obama. And a lot of collateral, a lot of fucking people had to die because Israel was preserving its own fucking self from our conspiracy against it, which is a conspiracy against it. Why would we, by the end of the 90s, turn to the 2000s, want to be whatever? With all the work we had fucking done to try to bring peace with the, let's bring this Yasser Arafat guy in. I think that we're just, I think we're losing that perspective. Right? And we were meant to. Think about for how long everything wrapped around that. And everything wrapped around that because to ask the question of why the Jews then ends up being you forced to talk about the Bible, and now we're all talking about holy wars and everything else. Your land is the Holy Land. Okay? Hallowed ground for your family. So, yeah, that's a holy war, right? We had a holy war with the tribes here because we needed to settle because we were unhallowed from our lands for our beliefs. And looking at what happened to certain kinds of Protestants in Europe under subversive treatments would find themselves in the American colonies for various reasons, and we're able to put those values into play. And it's what makes American values so widely different from European values. And made it about far more than just casting off the empire over petty economic issues, right? It's like, we want to have a completely different relationship with each other than the imperial kingdom model. That's what we said. And it was the perfect move at a time where kind of the humanist movement had not yet decided it definitely wanted to be communist. We caught fire just in time before the French Revolution caught on and started to spread the more progressive ideas. And our generation, having watched what happened with the French, we saw a great deal of wisdom in how we did it, and we've been talking about that ever since. So there's so Israel can carry on. The world needs to stop making it special that way. The issues at hand may have a lot to do with religion if you're going to get a whole bunch of their arguments coming from that, right? But you may be just kind of dealing with kind of like, yeah, he's a fundamentalist, but also there may be a more rational, larger governing body keeping him at bay, right? I don't like the smug attitude of Netanyahu, right? You know, I can be fair with everybody that Netanyahu is probably not a character that I think plays super well with most of America, right? Because you start getting really frustrated. Like, okay, if you're just defending yourselves from Palestine, and Palestine's not a fucking state, then there really shouldn't be a massive intelligence issue with you fucking documenting your own fucking military actions to demonstrate, along with any preceding, intelligence that shows what your agreed upon rules of engagement are, right? Now, because there's so much of a toothless fiction to any global decorum of ideas of war crimes and things like that, there's very little. I've watched people show me footage of a guy just getting fucking subdued by the police because he was resisting arrest in Israel, and saying that it was rape footage just because there was an obstruction while the guy was being, tackled behind the person obstructing a clear shot of what was happening. Because I didn't see anything that looked like thrusting. I didn't see anything that looked like undressings. I didn't see anything that where a guy, where people were being sadistic. I didn't hear the proper kind of screaming or laughing, because you know that there's fucking sadistic laughing when you're gonna have it. If not sadistic laughing, it's more of just like real abusive fucking language or whatever. Like, I didn't see any of that in this footage that was accusing this guy of raping a Palestinian prisoner or something like that. Okay? None of that's fucking happening. Unfortunately, they're just a fucking... there are people that have been failed by generations going back to the Ottoman Empire. Right? These people have been like this forever. And that wouldn't be a problem, except they're too fucking isolated and there's a big fucking world happening around them with people that have horrible agendas for that region that are behind the people causing the mess now to clear for the establishment of those agendas. And we're trying to stop human enslavement. And I'm not even saying that necessarily the nationalist globalist argument is going to even make a fucking difference. I mean, both of them are asking for fucking government. Because all of them are asking you to behave a certain way in order for certain things to function, right? And under this nationalist model, my spirit is comfortable in America, right? I don't necessarily feel that whipping chain of control like that, right? There's people that feel completely controlled by their government, and that's because no one in their society has given them permission to be openly anarchist, right? People have to be worried about you because you avoid tax filings and all of these different things, right? Because you believe that you're obligated to all of it. Right? And your first thinking is, can I handle it myself? Not, how fast can I get a professional outside of my authority into the situation? And, at any rate, all of this stuff, from your personal feelings about the world around you to the way you think the whole world works, is going to be informed by your experience of these things, or how you've been told the experience is through vicarious exposition, such as seeing it on television, in like a documentary, whatever. You get in there with the news crew and all that stuff, and right, you get wrapped up in the drama of the human interest piece, and I think because women don't understand the issue the way that they do, the way the men do, they think if they just hear the complaints, appease the complaints, then that's pretty simple, and it all stops. It's like, there's something unsaid. There's something unsaid that they want to talk about. These complaints are a ruse. They have ill intentions. They're holding back on something, right? This is the stuff in the world that the men catch by the way that they're designed to be observant, versus how a woman is designed to be observant to certain things. Part of our strengths and weaknesses, and why we compare notes, and why certain men have female like podcasters that they like, and certain women have male podcasters that they like, to pick up on what those things are. So that's it. That's all of this actually is. Even Nick Fuentes is starting to see this, right? He might reach similar conclusions that I do. Because at a certain point, something here needs to make sense to fucking somebody. Because outside of the atypical political theater that you're used to, you're not hearing the same kinds of arguments coming from certain others. And everybody is also looking, look at how certain people we thought were friends, certain people we thought were enemies, come in and do the thing. Right? People are signing up on these Abraham Accord things. Why? Why have we taken for granted that it's going to be a bad thing? We see the rest of the fucking system. Well, we're going to have to do our best to make a case to the world as to why we're not going to participate in that system, and why you probably shouldn't either, which is what we've been doing, right? America has begun to convince the world to get off the carbon thing, right? The carbon taxes as a scam, right? And he's trying to say it so loud. He's trying to break the cycle, not just that we lull it, but that we break it as a cycle to fucking remember. So anyway, we've been going through a period of breaking a lot of cycles and, and going through a lot of certain kinds of pain, right? Like I said in the beginning, that I don't think, the nuclear weapon is kind of a nonsense thing, because if anything can be narrowed down to 2 weeks away, it means it can be narrowed down to any time now. And for some fucking reason, we're locked into this. When I simply looked at it and I said, after what they did to their own protesters, after all of this stuff and all of their interventions and everything that I came to understand after 2020 with the Soleimani strike on New Year's Day, I came to realize that, yeah, they are legitimately a problem. Because listen, didn't we all really like how foreign policy was going up until 2020? Didn't we? Yeah, we did. Q or no Q, you were largely thinking Trump was being pretty fucking politically heroic, considering everything in that time. And we know that we've been manipulated, and because we're coming to these revelations under how the Trump administration has handled things, and how the Trump handled things even in the in-between with Biden, that we kind of realize that we can't trust anybody. And so we're in an emotional response to it, because we're seeing the conspiracies in disbelief, even, knowing that we always knew. But, to be on this level and not realizing that people would this foolishly fall for it, now that so many people are aware of the warnings coming from us, but they were listening, but they weren't taking us seriously. It was tertiary knee-jerk reaction stuff. It was, it was making fun of it to establish trust in the system by having the clown makes the truth look ridiculous, right? And thus the Alex Jones sound clip. And people aren't falling for that anymore. And, and then you ask yourself, you never hear Alex doing anything in broadcasts that often that is so wham bam wow, right? You hear about a thing that he does once in a while, and that's kind of politically successful, but there's not much in, because it's his delivery. It's just like, where's the straight guy that can deliver this instead of the guy about it, right? I don't need the character act, right? The character act isn't necessary anymore. We're all ready to fucking sit down like rational human beings and take it seriously. You don't have to yell like that when you've been fucking heard, right? Have some good form, professional form, even if you have to do it with your shirt off. But anyway, So anyway, global forces that are scapegoating the state of Israel and scapegoating Israel's Jewish enemies is the actual enemy here. And you're going to eventually realize that, because you can't find anybody who isn't just as guilty. Yes, we hate it when we do it ourselves, but you know what? We're always forced into these situations, right? We are, like, if you don't even have a state, you can't even be called a civilian population. You don't have a standard of civilization. You're a tribal population, right? And, you get your weapons and you go off and you do your thing, and, the military is the ones that have to strike back, and they're striking back on behalf of the ordinary civilian population in Israel. This is the thing. Anybody of any race and whatever can turn themselves into fucking savages and abuse their personal authority to defend themselves and to be armed enough to do so. And this is what you get all too often. You don't like it because they're pushing in and they're encroaching and they're settling. Yeah, they need to. They're a growing fucking civilization, and your tribes are on, land that is already claimed as territory, right? Palestine's a territorial designation for that which is not under Israeli jurisdiction yet. And that's all that it ever has been. And we've taken, and we can't, they won't even agree to what? Reservations, right? The reservation system. They need enough land to do their living thing or whatever, and then they're always welcome to join the fucking country. Which is a slow and painful way of getting some semblance of an idea of what it means to have borders and buildings. I don't know, that seems pretty simple to me. Alright. Hi, Trevor, I'm sure you were listening. So, I don't have a problem with Israel. That's the thing. Right? But I am paying attention to the conversation by people that insist that Israel is a special problem. It's not. It's an ordinary problem, like every other fucking country that says and does dumb things. So anyway, thanks so much for tuning in. I'll catch you later.